So buyer paperwork, there's a few different pieces of paper that you guys should be aware of. I'm going to share my screen with you guys because I first want to show you most important, your dashboard. So agentskWphiladelphia.com. Definitely save this email address. This is our dashboard. And on the dashboard, there's a section called PA Forms. And that's where all of the blank PDF documents of all of the forms that you could ever need would be. So it's down at the bottom here. When you click on that, you'll see it'll open a Google Drive. The Google Drive has all different paperwork. So highly encourage you guys to check this out and to physically print out the documents so you have time to read it. You can write notes on it. If you come across something, you have a question about it, that's a great opportunity to hop on the 5 o'clock question hour and ask a coach more detailed questions about a contract. So today we're gonna focus on the buyer tenant and agency contract. So that looks like this. This is a blank one. So again, you guys would need to fill it out. In the top, it's going to list the broker company info as well as the licensee's info. So really important, guys, this is where you're identifying our company, Keller Williams Philadelphia, the company license, the company address, phone number, as well as your name, your license number, your contact info, and your email. Why do we think that's important to have on our contract?
Oh, I thought I was muted.
Oh, that way the client, buyer tenant, can have all of our contact info, but then also the brokerage can see all of our contact info to make it easier.
Absolutely, right? This is a legal binding contract. Our client needs to know our office info as well as our personal info. Great job. The next section you'll see, you're going to fill in the buyer's name, the buyer's mailing address, phone number, and email. Why do we think it's important we have all of that information?
So Keller Williams, our client, it's easy to identify them or the property?
Yeah, absolutely. Also, we're going to need that info for our contracts, right? When we start writing agreements of sale, we're going to need that info as well. You may also find that sometimes your buyers, there might be multiple buyers, right? So this is an opportunity to get the husband and the wife's contact info, or, you know, both buyers' info. Or if it's an LLC, right? They really want to buy a property in their LLC. That's going to trigger you to know, okay, there's additional information I need. If ABC123 LLC is going to be the buyer, we know we're going to need certain additional documents. We're going to need to see, you know, their LLC paperwork. We also need to know who is part of that LLC. So this section is very important, so we understand that we have also the correct phone number, the correct email, and the correct mailing address. The next section talks about the buyer understands that this buyer agency contract is between the broker and the buyer. Does anyone have questions about that? So when you are going under contract with any of your clients, the client is actually making the contract with Keller Williams. And you are designated as the licensee that is working with them. Does that make sense to everybody? So line 14 asks, does the buyer have a buyer agency contract with another broker? This is when, if you guys are doing open houses, right, we're asking people that come in the door, are they working with an agent right now, right? Because we need to know if they already have a contract with another agent. Because we want to have exclusive rights to that client, right? We don't want to be running around showing them houses to find out that they're writing a contract with another agent, right? That's a waste of our time. We don't get paid to open doors. So that is why there's a box that they need to check yes or no. So, and you should be asking your clients this. When might it be okay if they're working with another brokerage?
FISBO.
So FISBO, they wouldn't be working with any brokerage because that's a for sale by owner, but that was a great guess.
I have really no clue. I mean, how can you, I mean, dual agency, I know, but I'm not sure about.
So we see it sometimes if they are selling a property in a different state and then they're moving to Philadelphia, right?
Got it. Okay. Yeah.
So if they're selling their house in California, they may already be working with a brokerage in California, but now they're going to be signing a contract with us here in Pennsylvania to buy their new Philadelphia home. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Absolutely.
That also allows us some clarity, right? Oh, okay, great. So now I have just discovered and need to ask my client, do you need to sell that house in order to buy your new house? Right? It allows us to understand a little bit more about our client's financial situation. Also, who else they're working with. So really important that we ask that question, you know, if they're working with any other brokerage. You may also find out that by talking with them through this, that they are working with an agent. And that's going to allow you to be like, hold up, stop. If you're working with another brokerage, another agent, do you have a contract? And if they say no, it's probably going to be that much more important that we do get a signed contract. Why do we even care about having a signed contract?
Because they can use other agents that can take our commission. So like you were saying, like we could show, I remember the one example that you first said to us was like, you could show these people properties and then they're like, oh, I like this house. My uncle's a builder, I'm gonna use him. And you're like, all right, so I just wasted all my time. But the contract says that either I get commission or the buyer would have to pay me what my commission would be for that property. I think it's at the bottom of that page, actually.
Yep, absolutely. You guys are professionals. You wouldn't hire an attorney to represent you in court and not sign paperwork that that's your attorney and that you're going to pay the attorney a fee. So don't shortchange yourself. Make sure that you are acting like a professional and getting a contract signed. So when do we think we should get this contract signed?
On the initial appointment that you set up with the client?
Yeah, sooner rather than later, for sure, right? So a lot of times we'll get a lead, we'll talk to them, right? They'll be like, oh, I really want to go see this house. No problem. That's the point where we need to start explaining to them as a licensed realtor what we can help them with, right? Our value proposition. Most people do not know how we get paid, and they aren't always comfortable asking us. But when we share with them insight that they don't have to pay upfront for our services, when we work with a buyer, the seller is actually the one to pay our commission. And that by signing this contract, it allows us to know that they are committed to working with us. And therefore, we are going to be committed to working with them and helping them look for a home and research properties and explain to them, you know, the process and payments and, you know, comps in the neighborhood and writing contracts and showing homes, right? We do more than just take keys out of lockboxes and open doors. You may need to share that with your client. And that is why a contract is so important, because then you have in writing that they understand that you are exclusively representing them and the fees that are associated with that contract. So on the second part of this contract, you'll see in section 1, it actually goes over a start date and an end date. So your end date, I always get the question, so what should I put? Is it a month? Is it 6 months? Is it a year? And that's really going to depend on your client's timeline. I'm always going to recommend that you do your contract longer versus shorter, because in reality, you can always cancel this contract as long as we have something in writing that the buyer and the agent agree to it. So if my client tells me that they want to buy a house sometime this year, well, then I'm going to try and get my contract to be to the end of the year. Now, sometimes that may scare a client, right? Why do I have to be in a contract for so long? And that's where we can then dive deeper and go a little bit more into what their actual timeline looks like and explain to them the process, right? So the housing market is very competitive right now. So, you know, the idea that you're going to find a house in the next 30, 60 days may not be realistic, but that doesn't mean that I'm not still there to support you and working with you. So this may be an opportunity for you to really kind of talk through your client about when they expect to be serious about buying a house. I let my clients know if at any time I'm not doing a good job, they have my permission to fire me. And in same terms, if they're not showing up and being good clients, that I have their permission to fire them. Because we don't want to be putting in all this time and effort and energy if the clients aren't willing to show up to showings either. Does anyone have questions about that? A start date and an ending date for the contract? Okay, the next part, this is probably the one I get the most questions about, and it's the broker fee. So this dives into those fees. And we know as buyer's agents in the Philadelphia market, typically we're seeing commission fees for a buyer's agent anywhere from 2.5% to 3%. And you'll see this is kind of broken down in this contract. So in a purchase transaction with the seller represented by a real estate broker, the fee is blank. This is where you would put that 2.5% to 3% of the purchase price. If your client maybe is in a lower price point, and maybe you're seeing that most of the homes that they're buying only offer a flat rate fee, you'll see there's also an or blank dollar amount. I see this a lot with my buyers that want to buy vacant plots of land. You know, a plot of land selling for $50,000 may not be offering the 2.5% commission. You may see more flat rates. 2.5% on 50,000 would be 1,250. So you might see maybe there's a flat fee for $500, $1,000. So again, if your client is at a lower price point, you may consider that there may just be a flat fee offered. Letter B says, with a seller who is not represented by a real estate broker, right? So not represented by a real estate broker. What kind of clients are not represented by real estate brokers on the sell side?
FISBO?
Yes. You may also see this with like friends and family too, right? So the grandma wants to sell the house to the grandkid. So similar to like a FISBO. So in those situations, right, it is not established how much money is going to be paid to a buyer's agent because they're not working with a real estate broker. So you need to have that conversation with your buyers. Traditionally, if a seller is represented by a real estate broker, in our industry, it is common practice that a 2.5% or 3% is paid to the buyer's agent from the seller side. But there are situations in this market where there are for sale by homeowners, or you may find a friend or family member that wants to sell their house. And in those situations, there isn't anything established. But I'm still here to help you and represent you. So we need to have the uncomfortable conversation of, if that is the case, the house you find is not represented by a realtor and a real estate broker, are you okay paying me a real estate commission fee? And it's going to depend on your client's financial situation, but it's way more comfortable to have that conversation up front than at the settlement table. So on this section, you would identify what it is that you're going to agree. Typically, it's still around the same, that 2.5 or 3%. Or again, any questions about that? All right, so the other next line, it talks about a broker's fee in event of a lease transaction. So we also use this paperwork when we're working with rental clients. This is the section that you would fill out if you're working with a rental client. So it's line 38, number 2, broker fee in event of a lease transaction is blank. Typically, we're seeing on the rental market 50% of the 1 month's rent. So if rent is $2,000, that would be $1,000. I would encourage you not to necessarily put a dollar amount here, but to literally write 50% of monthly rent. Because you may initially talk to your client and they might say, oh, I'm looking for a rental and my price point is $1,600 a month. And then it turns out they end up buying something for $1,900 a month. You don't want to miss out on money. So I encourage you to write 50% of monthly rent. Any questions about the broker fee in event of a lease transaction?
Dana, I have a question about the one we were just talking about, the seller. Well, this says the seller who is not represented by a broker. I'm sorry, I was thinking about a buyer who's not represented. So if you have a buyer, all right, I don't want to confuse myself. So if you have a seller that's not represented by a broker and the buyer has to pay your fee, if the buyer asks you, how are they going to pay that? So I guess they would have to be prepared to have that money ready at the table when you get to the
Correct,
settlement
that's
table.
settlement. Yep, exactly.
Okay, because they got to know they're paying out of pocket themselves.
Correct.
Okay.
And we'll go over some other documents that we can utilize to better understand our client's financial situation. But it's important that you have that conversation sooner rather than later, because it does happen. There are chances that they could be walking down the street, see a house for sale by owner, and they want you to write up the contract and, you know, help them with negotiating home inspection. And oh, by the way, they don't know any home inspectors. And you want to make sure you get paid.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Of course.
I have
Yeah,
that
that's-
question.
Yep.
Okay, I will. I'm sorry, I thought somebody else was asking a question too. Can I go ahead?
Yep, you're
Yeah,
good.
go ahead, Sneha, sorry.
And that's okay. I just wanted to make sure. So there's a dollar amount here, right? Like, or do we just say 2.5% here again?
You could
in
do
case of-
either one.
Okay. But how do you know? Like, people start out with saying something, but end up buying something. How do we know that flat fee, right? Isn't it better to just say 2.5 and then can we go back into negotiation if that situation occurs? Is that even possible?
You can, but you'll see here on the line, it says with the seller who is not represented by a real estate broker, the fee is blank percent of the purchase price or blank. So you could write both. You can write a percentage and a flat fee.
Okay.
So the conversation probably looks something like, traditionally, realtors are paid their commission by the seller, but there are situations where a seller is not represented by a real estate broker. And in that case, the buyer would be responsible for paying the commission. Traditionally, it's 2.5%. Are you comfortable if we find a house that you love and it's, a for sale by owner or a family member's house, and I'm still doing all the duties to help you go through, write the contract, make sure you understand the contract, help you with home inspection, negotiate with you on home inspection, review the title report with you, all the things that we do as realtors. Are you comfortable paying me a commission? And if they say, well, I don't know if I could afford 2.5%, but I could pay you $1,000, then you can write that down.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you.
Yeah. Crystal, do you have a question?
Yeah, so for just the leasing one, just to make sure, because I'm thinking about the situation I was in before. For the in event of a lease transaction, so just always put 50% or whatever it typically is, and then just explain to them, hey, in this situation, like if you're finding a private landlord and they're not cooperating, this is essentially what it is. Or if after our contract ends and you find something that I showed you, it's showing that I would still get a commission for that one. Is that how we can explain it to them?
Correct.
Okay.
If you have a signed contract and you were the one that showed them the property, then you're the procuring cause. So you are owed the commission if they choose to move forward and sign a lease.
Mhm. So how would you know unless you just straight up ask them, like if your contract ends and then they go with a unit that you showed in the beginning? How would you figure that out?
So those are two different things. You just said if your contract ends. So if your contract ends, you're out of luck.
Okay.
Because then you don't have a contract.
Right. So then technically you don't have to get anything. Okay.
Great
Dana,
question.
I have a question. Wait, hold on. Sorry. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Isn't there a part of the contract that also says if there's a sale made 60 days after the ending date of the contract, and it's a house that we showed, that we also get commission for that?
So you're talking about when the contract ends, is that correct? You broke up a
Yeah.
little bit.
Sorry. So yeah, isn't there a line that says 60 days after the ending date of the contract, if they go forward with any home that we showed them? Or no, is that just for the listing side?
That's on the listing side.
Listing side. Okay, got you.
Yep. Now, we can always extend these contracts. We see that very much there's a bidding war going on because inventory is, moving so quickly. So if you're working with a client and you see you're getting close to the end of your contract date, you may want to say, hey, are you enjoying working with me? Our contract's about to expire. I'd like to extend our contract another 60 days. And in that, you could either edit this current contract and have each of you initial it, or you could do an addendum that states that you both agree to extend the contract till this new date. So I highly encourage you in this business to always have everything in writing. I even go so far as if somebody texts me something, I will take a screenshot and email it to myself so I have proof that they said X, Y, and Z. Because if I ever needed to go to court, I want to make sure that I could show a judge, this is where I got this. Here I have, written proof that they agreed to these terms.
Thank you so much for that, Dana, because I am in that same boat. They replied everything in text and I was feeling nervous because there was no email about it. I'm going to do that right away. Thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. You'll also notice with this contract that the buyer and you as the licensee need to initial every single page. Really, really important that, every page is initialed, as well as at the bottom, you'll see the buyer signs and then you will sign. So the broker company would be Keller Williams Philadelphia, and it's accepted on behalf of, this is where you would sign and date the contract. So when we're in our command, right, we have all different checklists. And when you are working with a client and they say that they are ready to buy a home, always, always, always create an opportunity. This will make sure it stays top of mind. It'll show you also kind of your pipeline, what that looks like. And I don't know about you guys, but it gets me really excited when I start seeing dollar signs of what my potential income could be that I could make. My probable income as I move it from cultivate to appointment to an active client to getting them under contract, you'll see this probable income start to increase closer to my potential income, which is really exciting. So when you create a contact and then you start an opportunity, you'll see under the documents section in command, you'll pick exactly which checklist, which should be the residential Pennsylvania side. And it literally in command will tell you which documents you need to make sure that you're getting your clients to sign. So in the beginning, when we first talk with our clients, we need to make sure that they're signing the consumer notice as well as the affiliated business disclosure. So the consumer notice, is that a contract?
No.
No.
Great
And it
job.
says it in big bold letters on the top of the first page. Is that where it says it?
Absolutely. Right underneath it. Why do we give our clients a consumer notice though?
It's so that we have proof that we did our job to educate them about what our job is and the real estate recovery fund and things like that.
Yeah, if you're not sure, guys, you literally can read it right from the paperwork here. So, you don't have to memorize this, but literally it's to inform the decisions about the business relationship that the consumer is going to have with the real estate broker and the salesperson, you guys, the licensees, as well as the Real Estate Licensing and Registration Act, which requires that consumers be provided with this notice at the initial interview. So I encourage you to print a hard copy of this and to read it and to let myself or the other coaches know if you have any questions about this document. The second document we go over with our clients is called the Affiliated Business Disclosure. Why do we give our clients the affiliated business disclosure?
We have to let people know that we have relationships internally with other companies, just in case they ever try to say that we put an inspector on them or a lender on them or an insurance company on them. So we let them know in advance that we have relationships with them.
Absolutely. And it says that, again, you don't have to memorize this. It's listed right here under disclosure of business relationship. So Keller Williams Philadelphia and its agent licensees may have relationships with certain providers of services and affiliates related to your sale or purchase of real estate. Because of this relationship, a referral may be provided for financial or benefit to your real estate agent. And we list, Go Abstract for title, mortgages like Finance of America. So we need to make sure that these are, very clear that they work with us. Because they work with us, we trust them. These are people that we know are going to pick up the phone and answer questions for our clients. We also know based on experience and our own personal rapport that we've developed with these people. So really important, guys, that we disclose that. As we start to show our clients houses, I'm going to encourage you. I really feel like the buyer tenant agency contract should be in consultation. It's listed in under contract. I'm going to tell you, get it signed when you get your consumer notice and affiliated business disclosure signed. You do not want to write an agreement of sale or run around a client showing them houses without a contract. And again, you can click on here and it'll show you the document, that blank document of the buyer tenant agency contract, right in command. Now you're able to edit and utilize all of these documents at command because it should be set up and connected with DocuSign. If you are not sure if you are connected with DocuSign, I would highly encourage you to make sure that you have a conversation with your coach and with John Paul, our tech trainer. We have technology training every Friday at 11 a.m. and I highly encourage you guys to attend those trainings so that way you can be, more, you have a better understanding of command and how to use all of these tools that you pay for. I would also encourage you guys to watch Vicky Carey's video on the buyer and seller paperwork. She goes really in depth explaining line by line, both the buyer agency contract as well as the listing paperwork. And I'm telling you, you want to know and feel really confident about the paperwork before you have to have people sign it. You'll probably still have questions, and that's totally okay. So what questions can I answer for you guys? We have about 20 minutes left.
I have one question. The paperwork where you have other businesses listed as our partners, do you kind of keep updating that? Because I know we added a lot more people to our thing, but I didn't see that when you pulled up that paper, all of them mentioned. I believe First Trust is with you guys now. Do they update that all the time?
Yes. So Joe, who works in compliance, he's also at the front desk at Fishtown. I believe you guys met him if you were at
Yes.
Fishtown on Friday. Joe is the one who is checking all of your paperwork, and Joe is the one who's working on updating those. So thank you, Sneha, for pointing that out. So we have
Okay.
2 new lenders. We have Round Point as well as First Choice, Chris Schwartz. So they are working on updating that paperwork.
Yeah, because the reason I'm asking that question is because I really have to send out this information to my new client. And
Yep.
I don't know how to access that information on agents. I mean, this is a part, I mean, doesn't have to be part of this conversation, but if you could just point it later on to me, that'll be great.
Yeah. So the best resource for you is going to be the PA forms. The PA forms on the dashboard has the affiliated business disclosures. I'm going to remind Joe today about updating them, but on the forms, it does have blank versions of all of those affiliated business disclosures.
Okay, my question is there any place on our agent KW Philadelphia where all the businesses are mentioned so that I can get the contact number and send it to my client? Because I need to send that and I don't know where to find that information, how to contact these business people.
Yes. So let me show you on the dashboard. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So when you're on agentskWphiladelphia.com, you'll see right down here, it says MSA and concierge service contact sheet.
All right. Okay.
If you click on that, there's an MSA one. I don't know if First Choice Chris
This is
Schwartz is
awesome.
on here.
Okay.
But this has the different companies and the contact info. It doesn't look like Chris Schwartz is on here or Round Point. So if you need their contact info, Sneha, just let me know and I can connect you.
Yeah, I just need, even this is basic. There are enough people for them to start, that's
Yep.
not that urgent. I just needed to know where I can find that. And I spent some time and I couldn't find it, but thank you so much.
No problem. And you can download this. This is a PDF, so you can download it and email it to your clients. So again, It's
Awesome.
on the dashboard,
On the
MSA
right-hand
and
side.
concierge services.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
No problem. Great question. Anybody else have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. So when should you go over like the buyer's financials and letting them know like what their part is that they're going to have to pay, like inspections and stuff like that?
Great question. So typically when I'm talking to a client, number one, when they're a lead, right, I need to develop a relationship with them. So I get a lead, a name and a phone number and email, right? And they say, I want to see this house. Is that what you're experiencing, Robin?
Not right at the moment. However, with the last transaction that I had, he was a seller, so, but I didn't even know about that much about the buyer financial part of it. And I just wanted to know, like at what point, like, do you go through that with them at the what do you call it, the appointment, or like when is the best time to go over that buyer financial sheet?
Yep. Sneha or Earl, do either of you want to share your experience when you talk to your clients about finances?
So like I set it all up. So what I do, if I do leave, I ask them, if it's for buying a home, I absolutely try to do a Zoom meeting before we do anything. And in the Zoom meeting, I pull up like the basic documents you brought up, like the consumer notice, related business disclosure, buyer's agency contract. We go over everything, and then I talk to them about picking a mortgage lender. Did you pick a mortgage lender yet? Do you have anyone you want to work with? And then I tell them we need to get in touch with a mortgage lender to figure out what your financial situation actually is, because they can fill out the DFI however they want, but it doesn't mean it's true. So I would always recommend to them, before we go out and look at any homes, let's get an idea of what homes we can look at, so we're not wasting your time. And it's like an emotional process. You get to see this beautiful home, and then you get approved, and you find out your pre-approval of $20,000 lower than that home. And so I try to play it off like to say that, like, explain it as like an emotional process, and I want to take away the emotions and make it really smooth and be able to pick out a home and just get it and not worry about if you're even able to get a home. So in the beginning, I try to stress to get in touch with the first and figure out what they can afford before, because they ask all the questions that we need to know. Like,
Love that.
we can ask them the questions, but they can say whatever they want to us. They can't lie to the mortgage lender because he can look it up and tell us. So they could say to us, yeah, we can afford like $2,000 a month. And we're like, all right, we go on for it. We type it in, like the buyer's estimated cost, it says 2,000. And then we talk to Josh or whoever the lender is, and he said they can only afford 1,500. So that's what I try to do, is to get them in touch with the lender and pre-approve before we show any homes, so that there's no like surprises.
I love that. I love that you're setting up a Zoom call or an appointment like a professional. So that's huge. That's going to save you a lot of time and headache, right?
Yeah.
Because you're going to set those expectations. And yes, like Earl said, they could tell you whatever, oh, I'm a business owner, I make a ton of money. But when it comes to actually getting approved for a mortgage, it's important that they speak to a lender sooner rather than later. So that way we know what they're actually approved for. And I'll even tell people, like, I can't confirm appointments for you until you have a conversation with a lender first, because these homes are going so quickly that we need to know that we can write an offer as soon as you see it, if you like it, because chances are 10 other people are also looking at this house. So once we've had that initial buyer consult and they've done the pre-approval with a lender, that's the opportunity then to go into the BFI, and dive a little bit more deeper into their finances. And like Earl mentioned, the buyer financial information sheet, this is where it kind of talks about, like, will you occupy the property? Have you declared bankruptcy? What exactly are your assets, right? How much cash you have in the bank? And if your client is writing down that they only have $3,000 in the bank, well, that's an opportunity for you then to have that conversation. Okay, well, besides down payment, there's also inspection costs, appraisal costs, closing costs. How are you going to provide the money needed in order to buy this home.
Yeah, I also think it's a good idea to have the BFI because you could submit an offer for a property and it could be lower than another offer. But if that client put in more money, but actually the BFI shows that they're not as stable as we are, you might have a better chance to get accepted with a lower price offer.
Absolutely. Robin, what other questions do you have? That was a really good question.
I don't have anything off the top of my head right now. I was just trying to see if I had anything regarding the buyer contract. I can't think of anything at the moment.
Did we answer your question that you had just asked regarding the BFI and when to talk about it?
Yeah, that pre-approval. When you guys mentioned pre-approval, that rang a bell and reminded me, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Make sure they get a pre-approval. So yeah, that was good. Thanks.
Of course.
So I have a question.
Yep.
Dana, I had my first consultation with my buyers yesterday, and I presented them all these documents, including consumer notice, my agreement. I give them a copy to read it beforehand so that it doesn't feel them overwhelming. And I gave them buyer financial information, and I said, you need to start filling this up. There is no account information, but this will help you to talk to mortgage people, and it will help you to know what's going on in your financial world, really. But should I have sat down with them and have them fill out, because they were just meeting me for the first time? I just didn't want. I find to give them a little bit more time, because we're not seeing houses right away. We're going to talk to. That's why I asked about the mortgage people. But like, when is the time that you ask them to sign that now? Now that I've met them, they really want to go ahead. What do I do next? Like, is it okay to now do a Zoom call to fill up the document?
Absolutely. So I love that you gave it to them, for them to review. Yes.
Yeah.
So now that you've gone over it with them, I would highly encourage you to have a Zoom meeting, and I would send it out via DocuSign. So it makes it super simple. Here you go. I've sent you the DocuSign. I can walk you through it if you need help signing it on DocuSign, or we could meet in person, right? But let's get that, consumer notice, affiliated business disclosure, and buyer agency contract signed.
Okay. But like, usually, would you have asked them to fill out, because this is they're from open house, so they like don't know me.
Yep.
And it was so much information, because I was also trying to do a consultation of what they're looking for in a home. That's like, they say something on the phone, but it's completely different, when you meet them.
Yep. Yeah, develop the relationship first, but
Mhm.
also you don't want to waste your time consulting them without a contract in place.
Okay. Yeah, but I did tell them, this is a review, want you to have it, this is what we're supposed to do at a first meeting. I want you to take all these documents. I gave them the presentation, and let them take that and figure it out, like what kind of home, because they might have said something and they might want something else.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
No, of course, great questions. All right, guys, we also have lead generation. If you guys are interested in joining that, you have your open question hour with coaches. So leverage all of your resources. If you have questions, you guys brought up awesome things today. I really appreciate you showing up, and I can't wait to help you guys close more deals this year.
Thank you so much, Dave.